All right, girls, welcome back to, I think, week 5 of the Girls College Recruiting Webinar. And this week we have two great coaches, two guys that I've known Eric for quite a few years and met David on the recruiting trail at Southern Regionals a couple years ago, I believe. And
yeah,
two very good coaches that run two very good programs. So I'm excited to have them. So thank you guys for both being here. And just to do a little introduction of both of you, Coach David McDowell of Truett McConnell University is a graduate of Bob Jones and got his master's degree at Columbia International. He is originally from Belfast, Northern Ireland. As I said, he is a current head coach in his 14th year. I think that's correct. At Truett McConnell, where he's had a record of 112 wins, 75 losses, and 14 ties. He is a two-time AAC conference champion in 2018 and 2019. Made NAIA tournament appearances in both of those years. Was also the AAC Coach of the Year in both of those years. And also was the NAIA Champions of Character Coach of the Year in 2017. So, David, thank you again for joining us and the Florida Rush girls tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
And our second coach is no stranger to any of us on the Florida Rush fields, I think, but Coach Eric Dobrzanski of Johnson & Wales down in Miami. He is a graduate of Florida State University and earned his master's degree in Concordia University in Irvine. He is in his 11th season at Johnson & Wales in Miami. He is the winningest coach in program history at JW. He is 3-time Sun Conference Coach of the Year, 2011, 2014, and 2019. He received the Sun Conference Coach of Character in 2017. And if I remember right, your staff also won Staff of the Year. Did I just lose him?
He was frozen up there for a second, so I don't know.
He'll come back.
Yeah.
So his staff won Regional Staff of the Year at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. He is also an ODP Florida staff coach, as well as former Cayman Islands staff team coach, and was the associate head coach at Thomas University. So until I get him back, David, we'll run with you. And just to go over the NAIA pathway a little bit, if you don't mind talking about what the benefits of an NAIA school, both academically and athletically, are for our kids.
Sure. I think that's always one of the big conversation pieces is, what's NAIA all about? How does it differ from the NCAA model of whether it's Division 1, 2, or 3? And, I will say that one of the main differences, if I can start with that, is, you're, for the most part with NAIA, you're looking at smaller schools for the most part, averaging around 2,000 students. And so what that looks like academically is you do get smaller class sizes. For example, Truett has a student-teacher ratio of 13 students per professor. So you get a smaller class size, more of an intimate personal setting. And for me, it kind of creates more of a platform to succeed academically. Whenever I went to Bob Jones, it was freshman class sizes of 200. And as you noted there, I'm originally from Ireland. I came over after high school. I'm in the country 3 weeks and I'm starting university, and I did not have a clue. And I was actually very shy back then. So I didn't want 200 people looking at me and saying, who's the funny talking guy asking the silly questions? So I actually finished my first semester at university with a 1.9 GPA, which I'm embarrassed to admit that. Not for lack of trying, but just didn't have a clue what was going on. So NAIA, I think, allows for more of that personal feel where the teachers are going to know you. They're going to know that you're on the women's soccer team, and they'll come to a lot of your games. So they see you more than just a student IED. They see you for a person that's majoring in biology or nursing, whatever it is. So I feel like there's a lot of good academic benefits. And then from an athletic standpoint, women's soccer, I would say it's probably on the level of Division 2 for the most part. And obviously, if you're talking about top 25 teams in Division II, whether it's Columbus State, North Georgia. I know they're close to both of our states. They're tough competitors. We play a lot of Division II schools in the spring just to kind of gauge where we're at, and we find that we can compete with them. So it's a good competitive level, but it's obviously not to the rigors, to the demands of what D1 would be asking. So I like it because, at least with Truett, it has this family atmosphere where you get to enjoy being a student athlete. You get to enjoy playing the sport that you love, but you also get to excel in the classroom, have a social life, and have a really good core group of friends that is usually your soccer team as well. So
yeah, and I'm an NAIA product myself, and I think I've talked to both of you about that and coached at the NAIA level, and completely agree with you. And Coach Eric, welcome back. But
yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna let you take both of these because I think they both kind of fit in about the same. The drawbacks of an NAIA school, and what the biggest misperception of an NAIA school would be.
Obviously David might have a different opinion in terms of, that stuff. I think some of the drawbacks are sometimes the resources. I think the resources are different at the NAIA. And I just mean from like a nutritionist, like a strength conditioning coach. Obviously some NAIAs take care of having those types of access, but it's not required. Whereas in like the NCAA obviously has, they have standards of administrators and things like that. Whereas in the NAIA doesn't have all those resources. So I would say that's sometimes the drawbacks, obviously athletically as well. Sometimes you don't carry as many sports as NCAA schools. I know a lot. When you go out recruiting, I don't know if Truett McConnell has football, but obviously you have a lot of athletes that are interested in watching other sports. Not necessarily participating in those sports, but the draw of college football and things like that. I think sometimes you run into that aspect of it. The common misperception. I think the common misperception is probably I think people maybe the level of competition. I think a lot of people maybe have misperception of it's not as good as maybe NCAA Division I or NCAA Division II. And I think that's a hurdle that David and I probably have to overcome quite a bit when we recruit. It's just really getting a player to understand that, hey, David's done a great job at Truett McConnell, winning conference championships, going to national tournaments. He plays in a really competitive conference. Same with us. Our national champion, the NAIA national champion, came out of our conference. So it's a lot of good players, a lot of good teams. We have a lot of transfers on our team, so we have like a Division I transfer, we have Division II transfers. So the level's there. So I don't know, David, is that about this the misperception? Is that
yeah,
kind of
covered? That's very much spot on. I touched on it a little bit at the level of competition at the start as well, and I think one of the other misconceptions I find is from an academic standpoint. There's a thought that you're not that smart, you've got a low GPA, we'll just go NAIA. Whereas at least from our program, our cumulative team GPA for the past 4 years has been a 3.6, and it's a lot of that does come about from recruiting the right type of person, but the academic entrance is not that hard. So to get accepted to an NAIA school is not that difficult, but once you get in, for the most part, you're going to see a high level of faculty and a high level of education as well.
Absolutely. And just to talk about your guys' coaching style program, I'm going to ask both of you guys the same question on this slide. Eric, if you want to start and just kind of give a short, brief overview of your coaching style and how you run your program.
Yeah, I would consider myself a player's coach in terms of I want to have a good relationship with our players. I want to be involved in their lives. Now, every relationship with the player is different, because there are players that don't want to be involved in their life, and that's fine too. So I'm very, it's a give and take. You know, some of them get more attached to your program than others, and things like that. But yeah, I mean, definitely a player's coach. I don't like to think I'm a know-it-all. So I think I let our players kind of not dictate the program, because obviously they're the ones that drive the culture. But you know, I'm always for them voicing their opinions. You know, maybe obviously in different not maybe during practice or during a game, but we have a leadership committee that we meet on Mondays and things like that. So I definitely give our players a voice, and I don't you know, I'm not always just like it's my way or the highway. You know, we could talk about things, whether it's formational things, whether it's, you know, practice things. I'm very open. I'm very comfortable acknowledging that. And sometimes I won't agree with them, and I'll just be like, hey, this is how we do it. And that's how we go. But yeah, I mean, big relationship. I mean, obviously David kind of mentioned it earlier, like the family atmosphere. I really do enjoy family atmosphere, and our players have always enjoyed that. And a balance, trying to find a balance in life with the school, athletically and socially.
Thanks, Eric. And David, your coaching style?
Yeah, it's very similar to Eric's. I used to be the men's coach at Truett as well back in the day. So I used to coach both programs. And coaching guys, I just realized I can say this because I'm a guy, we have this chip on our shoulder that when you coach boys, you have to knock it off them every single day, no matter how repetitive the same message is. And I just got tired of it. And I got tired of dealing with the egos and pride. And people will say, well, you know, you're coaching girls, you not have to deal with drama. Well, boys have their own drama. It's different, but it's there. And I realized that whenever I decided to coach girls, you know, as Eric alluded to as well, it's more relational, and that's my personality. I'm not a, you know, hard hitter. I'm going to come in and yell at you. It's more about, okay, let's talk this through. Let's process what's going on. And I prefer, you know, working with girls, because you just find that they want to talk about more than just soccer. They want to talk about life, you know, and how things affect them relationally. So I'm the same way, and it shows in the way that we play. We want the girls to enjoy themselves. You know, we emphasize a lot about don't be afraid to make mistakes, because that's the best way that you're going to learn. And we find that whenever the girls are free to express themselves, they're not worried about, you know, am I going to mess up today? Is the coach going to come down on me? But if they know that it's okay to make a mistake, that's, you know, part of the process, then they have a greater willingness to play to their best potential. So we definitely emphasize having that relational aspect and letting the girls enjoy their soccer as well.
Great. And, you know, at Rush, we talk to our kids a lot, and you guys know this about, you know, getting to know their future coach. And one of the ways to do that is to understand who their mentors are and who they, you know, their role models, their influences are. So, Coach David, if you wouldn't mind, you know, talking to the girls about who your mentors or who your coaching influences are in your coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all testify to the fact that a lot of who our coaches were made us, or at least had a great influence on the way that we try to coach. And I had a couple of coaches growing up in Ireland that they were more from the school of hard knocks. And so, you know, whenever they showed that tough love, it was hard to receive it at times, because, I mean, they were very tough on us, but you always knew that they wanted the best for you. And they emphasized as well, just, you know, enjoy your soccer. So, you know, I'm going to be tough with you, but I want you to enjoy what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And with two coaches in particular, they really focused on that, while also having the best interests of their players at the forefront of their priorities. So they would push you, they would challenge you, but at the end of the day, they wanted what was best for you. And then the other coach, I would say, is a good friend of mine now. Actually, his name's Scott Borchers. He's the men's head coach at Emmanuel College, which is a Division II school here up in Georgia. I was his assistant for 3 years at Truett, and just seeing how he went about his coaching, you know, even the format of a session, you know, trying to get that end product and kind of work backwards from that. And I really enjoyed learning essentially how to coach from him. So I would say those would be the main coaching mentors for me.
Thank you. And how about you, Coach Eric?
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very, very fortunate, and I've been blessed to have a really good career in terms of where I've been and who I've been incorporated with and things like that. My first boss and the person that gave me a chance to get into college coaching, and you guys probably know him, Ricky Zambrano. He was at Thomas University for 14, 15 years. I was like David. I coached on the men's side and the women's side there. I was his associate head coach. And he's still somebody that I talk to on a daily basis, and he's somebody that I attribute my career to because he was just so professional and so detailed. He had coached at the Division I level. He was at LSU, and then he was at an NAIA school before that as well. He really just taught me how to have a passion in everything you do, because obviously I think people don't really realize that as head coaches of college soccer programs, there's not a lot of coach. I mean, we do coach them, but there's a lot of administrative stuff. There's a lot of background stuff that people don't see. I think everybody just kind of assumes that you're on the field all day coaching your players and you just kind of show up. There's a lot of background, budgets, things like that. And he really showed me how to be passionate about all of it and really take a lot of, take a lot of pride in doing that, on a daily basis. And that's when I fell in love with college soccer. So I was very, very fortunate that he came into my, that was my first opportunity, because I always knew college soccer was something that I wanted to get into, and he just kind of really personified what a good college coach is. So he's definitely my mentor. And then for somebody that I don't know, I think a lot of us I follow Jurgen Klopp a lot from Liverpool, just from the aspect of, I think David alluded to it with the players, just the passion part of it. We want our kids to have fun. We want them to be passionate about playing the game. And I think, obviously Jurgen, and there's a lot of good coaches out there that you just love to see the passion, and enjoyment, because again, you don't get to do this for your entire life, especially college soccer. You get 4 years of it. So you might as well enjoy it and not be, dreading the mistake or, anything like that. So, enjoy the aspect of playing college soccer.
Awesome. And, Eric, we'll go with you first on this. What traits are important to you when you're looking into athletes, and both on and off the field?
Yeah, I mean, off the field to start off with is just the character part of it. I think as recruiting has gotten farther and farther, where we're looking at 2021s, we're looking at 2022s, you really have that time to build that relationship, like you kind of mentioned, with getting to know your coaches. You get to know your player, those recruits and those players quite a bit. So it's really character, because you could be a talented team, but if you don't have a good culture, you're gonna have some issues, and you're gonna lose some games because of it. So really the character part of it. On the field, again, I hate to kind of allude back to what David was talking about with the mistakes and stuff like that, but I like to see kind of how you bounce back from mistakes when you do make mistakes, because this is a 90-minute game, 80-minute game, whatever the, club and high school, things like that. But you're not going to get through a whole game without making a mistake. So that ability to bounce back, consistency, I think the ideas of the consistency in terms of, are you a 6? Are you a holding midfielder that rarely goes forward? Do you shy away from making that forward pass because you don't want to make a mistake? You just go backwards, sideways, things like that. Just those ideas that you can kind of see, like maybe you don't execute it all the time, but really just having like, that player really does have the idea of what you want to accomplish. But yeah, the consistency is one of the biggest things, is the technical consistency as well. So. Excellent.
And Coach David, the characteristics that are important, or the traits that are important to you, both on and off the field.
Yeah, I'll start with on the field first. I'm not the tallest of people. I'm probably 5'7" on a good day, and so playing soccer, I realized I wasn't going to win much in the air. Coming up against 6-foot guys, it was always an issue. So, but I realized with soccer, the beauty of it is if you can move the ball quickly on the ground, you can actually be quite good at it. So how I played then rolled into how I coach and the type of players that we look for. So we love, players that can possess. I know that's somewhat of a common answer, that we play possession-oriented soccer, but we really do emphasize that no matter what position you play, we always tell recruits, I'd say our center backs touch the ball more than anybody else, because we're always circling it and we're always moving it. So no matter what position you play, we want you to be comfortable on the ball. You know, in the attacking third, do what you want. 1v1s, have a shot from distance, try a little through ball. If it doesn't pay off, no worries. But, you know, like I said earlier, just express yourself and be creative. So we like looking for, you know, those almost attractive traits where, you know, you're going to be good on the ball and you're going to work hard at the same time. I think more than anything, you know, Eric said this, you know, it's not just about your ability, but it's how hard you want to work. And, you know, whenever we see girls where maybe they're not tracking back or, you know, they're not about defending, we kind of shy away from that. And that is, you know, if I can segue into the off the field traits, they kind of go hand in hand because, you know, we want to be a family, and we talk about being selfless and being sacrificial and playing for the team. And I know it's a cliche, but I do believe that there is, if you have this mindset of no player is bigger than the team, then you can accomplish a lot of good things. So we don't necessarily look for the star of any particular team. We look for those girls that are very team oriented, that will, you know, put a shift in any game. And that usually comes back to where their character is and what they're about as a person. So whenever I know coaches say this a lot, that, you know, we want good character. There really is a lot of truth to it. And I'll be the first to admit that whenever I first started coaching, I just went for the star player. I just thought, I'm just going to pack my team full of these girls that they're going to be great. They are the star. And at the end of the day, it was a nightmare because they just played for themselves. Mm-hmm. And when things got tough, that's when they shied away, and they didn't want to have to, you know, grind things out and show that grit that you need. So I'll say this to all the girls that are listening, you know, focus on your ability, focus on getting better every day, but make sure that you're also focusing on who you are as a person and your character, because that's what's going to get you farther.
Yeah, Trent, if I can add something.
Yeah, absolutely.
It brings a good point. It's the soccer IQ is big. I think finding soccer players that really know the game and really value the game in terms of whether they're watching it, whether they're, you know, because again, college soccer, you know, you might have been an outside back in club or high school, but when you get to college soccer, it's really just the ability to move around and play whatever position you can. And then I think lastly, it's really owning what you do really well. I always ask players, I'm like, so when you get into a game, what do you want coaches to really see that you do well? Whether it's being a ball winner, or whether it's being, you know, a good distributor, it's, you know, make sure you go into a game and you know exactly what you're able to, you know, what you want to do and what you want to accomplish. Now, obviously, continue to work on all the other things to be a complete player. But I think David and I, whenever, you know, if you're looking at a bench or you're looking to start a game against Truett, McConnell or something like that, it's like you want to know what your players can bring to the table. And I think that's something that I think players kind of lose sight of sometimes. It's like really own what you do well.
Excellent. And David, I think we'll start with you. You know, the evaluation feedback style you give to your current players, you know, while they're going through the 4 years in your program.
Sorry, Trent, just to clarify, that's more, are you talking about like feedback that they want after a game, after practices?
Sure, throughout the season and
sure.
You know, at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we, I think more than ever, the number one trait of any coach has to be communication. You know, players thrive in it. That's what they want. And so we try to make more of a conscientious effort, especially in game. If we're taking a girl off or we're subbing her off, just to clarify, look, this is the reason why we did it. You may not have done anything wrong. It may be a tactical decision, whatever it is. But I've realized that feedback is absolutely vital. So we do a lot of individual player meetings too, not just after preseason, not just at the end of the season, but we try to incorporate them both in a structured manner as well as unstructured. So structured, come to the office, let's talk it out, you know, bring your questions, but also I think, especially with today's generation, the unstructured feedback style is probably more vital, where, you know, we try to get down there before practice, get cones set up, and then maybe, you know, start juggling the ball, have a little bit of crossbar challenge, whatever it is. And that's where you find, let's talk about this in that last game, you know, notice your body language, you know, that you seem to be hard on yourself. Maybe you missed a shot. don't let that worry, just move on from that. And we're finding that unstructured type of evaluation is essential to working with players and helping them improve.
Absolutely. And Coach Eric, same thing to you. You're
no, I mean, David brings up great points. So structured wise, we do three structured meetings. We do one during preseason to make sure, that we're all on the same page. One after fall, and then one after spring to kind of reevaluate the whole year. So those are our structured ones. But like David said, I think the unstructured, the ones at the field, the ones, post game, those are the moments that you can really give them the feedback. But yeah, so we give them like the written evals during preseason, after the fall, and then after spring to kind of go over things that we want to improve. The fall meeting, the meeting when we meet with them after the fall season, is really a prelude into spring in terms of what we want them to get better at, in terms of, hey, we have these 11 weeks, 12 weeks to work with you. And David will kind of probably attest to this. It's like there's so little time in the fall for development for the most part. And you hate to say that as a coach, because obviously we all believe in development and we want our players to get better. But the fall season is so go, that you're really not able to concentrate on the player themselves. It's really, can you fit in? Can you do tactically what we're doing? And then we just go. And then the spring is a brilliant time where we can just go, hey, Trent, we want you to work on this. David, we want you to work on this. And then results don't matter in the spring in terms of the game. So it's really that ability to really give them the evaluation going into spring and saying, hey, this is what we want to work on. But yeah, those are the three structured meetings. But like David said, it's definitely meeting pre-practice, post-practice. It's sometimes frustrating, and like I said, David might have examples of this too. But it's when the player texts you and it's like, Coach, do you have any do you have any advice? It's like, through text, it's a little tough. Like I pick up the phone, or I'll see him at practice and things like that. It's always better. He was spot on. The communication part of it's so vital in college soccer, and that's on the players' side as well. If it's on the mind of the players, then they need to come and ask us as well. So
yeah, absolutely agree. And Coach Eric, when you're out on the recruiting trail, or talking to recruits, how do you know when a player is not a good fit for your program? What are the signs?
I mean, I think culture-wise, it's, in terms of, like, I like to show up and see how the player warms up sometimes, especially if it's a kid that we're really watching. Just because I want players that are going to be not professional, but I want you to act like a pro, like I want to know that you're going to go warm up the right way. You're going to see the trainer when you have access, when you're in college, and you're not just skipping out, not seeing the trainer because you don't want to spend the time doing it. So it's really trying to make sure that they have that belief in, really preparing themselves. And sometimes, like I said, I'll show up early to see them, watch how they interact with their teammates, how they interact with their coach, see if there's somebody that I have to babysit for 4 years, because that's not always fun,
Not what you signed up for, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I really like players that take care of the business in terms of warming up and doing, and obviously treating their teammates the right way. When they make a mistake, what's their body language when they make a mistake? What's their body language to their teammates when they make a mistake? I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, that's typically that goes into the culture part of it a little bit.
Yeah, appreciate it. And Coach David, also for you, how do you know when a player's not a good fit for Truett McConnell?
Yeah, well, I'm sure all the girls can testify that whenever there's a college showcase or tournament, all the college coaches usually congregate in one area in the corner of the field, and I do that, but I've never been a big fan of it. So what I've been doing recently is, as long as the club coaches allow me, as long as Trent's okay, I'll go behind the benches, not right behind, enough where it's not awkward. And it's been cool because I get to see, how the girls on the bench communicate, and are they tuned into what's going on in the field? What's their responses to any directives that their coach is given? And I'll be honest with you, we signed a girl for this incoming year almost solely based on how she was off the field as a sub. And she's a good player, but whenever she got subbed off, she went to the coach, asked for a little bit of feedback, then she spent the rest of the time encouraging her teammates, both on the field and the girls beside her. She was tuned in. She was saying, oh yeah, I think whenever I get back on, I'll be able to do this a little bit better. And it was really cool because she was very selfless, very encouraging, very positive, and just showed a great sign of character. So that's me saying what I look for. And I guess, on the other side of the coin, it would be whatever's essentially the opposite to that, where, whenever they get subbed off, are they more frustrated about the decision that they're not playing anymore? Do they make it about them, or, are they wanting to encourage? So just so you girls know, we look for those things. It's not just what's going on the field. We want to see, what your body language is like, what your responses are like whenever a decision maybe doesn't go your way, such as being subbed.
Yeah, I appreciate that from both of you. That's fantastic advice for our kids. So, Coach David, do you look at prospective student athletes' social media? And then on top of that, do you look at the social media of your current players?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Yes and no. I think whenever we've had a couple of emails or conversations with the recruit, I'll get on there very briefly and just make sure that there's nothing that is just terrible. I'm not looking, I'm not really, getting in depth. I just want to see if anything, shows up right away that's going to be a red flag, but I try not to dwell on it. And even with my current girls, I've found, I'll be honest with you, I used to do a little bit more social media, just watching, and it actually was not good for me, because I would see them do something on social media, and then it caused me to make a judgment about that girl. And so whenever I saw her next in person, I kind of formulated this thought about her, and I just didn't think that was fair on her, because, sometimes, and I'm sure all you girls are aware of this, social media is more about perspective, or perception, should I say, where you're trying to create a perception about yourself where maybe things look rosy, but they're really not, or, I want these likes, so it makes me feel better about myself. So you're trying to make a perception, and a lot of times perception becomes reality, which isn't a good thing. So I find, for my own health and for how I view my own players, to try to avoid social media unless an assistant coach points something out to me.
Yep.
Yeah. How about you, Eric?
No, I think that's spot on. That's pretty much exactly how I deal with it. It's like when we recruit a player, you'll type the name in Google really quick and just make sure there's nothing that's like out of this world crazy. But I won't, go into depth, too much depth about it. And same with the current players. It's just like David said, it was, unless it's something that's brought to my attention, it was a couple years ago that obviously our seasons kind of go over Halloween, obviously. So there was a couple years ago where we had a player that missed curfew for the day before, not a hotel curfew, but she was out, and it was on social media. And so that was, that's an easy way that people found out that she was out. I didn't follow her. It was brought to my attention, and, but this was a long time ago. But yeah, you got to watch what you're doing. It's, and then we released her, and things like that. So it was, but yeah, other than that, that's kind of really what David said.
Yeah. And going forward, I'm going to bounce the questions back and forth between the both of you, but please feel free, if you have anything to add on to any of the topics, just feel free to answer when at any time. But Eric, we'll start with you. What kind of academic support does your school offer outside of the classroom?
So we have an academic center that they track players. We have this great online system for our athletes that's called You Succeed. So our professors are required to update them every 3 weeks. So I can, check on everybody's grades every 3 weeks and kind of see them. And we have a thing where a professor can flag their grades. So, we typically do study hall based on that as well, in terms of just your GPA is what dictates whether you're in study hall or not. So we don't do like a whole team study hall. It's like, if you're a 4.0 student, I don't need you, everybody else in a room studying. So, but our academic center does a fantastic job of tutoring. They have tutoring for every class that we have at Johnson & Wales. But really the You Succeed access has been vital. We added it like 3 years ago, and just the ability to track absences, and then to track their grades, whether it's a test, and you go back to the feedback and the evaluation, even just seeing somebody's grade on a test, and then right before practice, just being like, hey, I saw this happen. How did your test go? Or, so it has been vital information for us. And then I think that's also something, maybe goes back to the misperception sometimes about playing sports in college. It's like, oh, sports is going to take away from my academics. I'm a big believer that it enhances it, because, David will tell you, like, he's keeping an eye on his kids, making sure they're eligible. I'm the same way. We have our academic advisors or tutors to make sure that you're on track and you're going to graduate, So I think it actually helps quite a bit to have that. And then, like I said, we have that online access to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But yeah, so we have really good programs that we're able to make sure that our kids are doing what they're supposed to be doing and things like that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And Coach David, feel free to touch on that topic. Or 2 weeks ago, actually, with the girls, we talked to JUCO coaches and just more gen ed. But at the NAIA level, what kind of additional resources can Truett, McConnell, or NAIA schools give to student athletes going into more specialized interests, more towards their program pathway? If that makes sense.
I mean, if I'm off in this trend, just say, but I know, for example, with our business degree, we set up internships with local businesses. So, you're not just getting a degree in business, but you're getting those hours and, within the type of business, whether it's interior design, whether it's management, accounting, we have internships that are set up that you can do both. Same thing, obviously, with education, the student teaching, nursing, we have clinicals. So there's a lot of off-site resources that, depending on what your degree is, we have that help. I mean, if you want to do psychology, then, we have a couple of different counseling centers in our town that we work in conjunction with. So I think you're seeing, even though we are a liberal arts university, you're seeing how much you need to be prepared for what vocation you're going to be going into, not just, oh, I did calculus, or I knocked out my English, but how are you being prepared for what's the next chapter after college? So there's definitely a good bit of additional resources for that.
And this is another reason that obviously I'm going on my 11th year at Johnson Wales. It's that additional resource, like David was just talking about. We're very fortunate where we're in South Florida, we're in Miami, so our access to, if a student's a sports management major, our access to the Marlins, the Panthers, the Dolphins, all that stuff is right there. So our school requires a mandatory internship here, just like David was saying with his business degrees. So it's been very, it's been really good for our students to be able to go out and get that internship experience and really that work experience. But our location helps quite a bit. And like I said, I don't want to, harp too much on the location, but it's a great location to study whatever international business, hospitality. We have those resources to really, get you set up for your career. And a lot of our professors are actually still in their field of study, whether it's, lawyers or business owners and things like that. So to have access to those types of professors has been beneficial for our students as well.
Yeah, I think that's a big benefit to NAIA schools. And we just did a boys webinar with NAIA coaches, and one of them's out in LA, and they have a huge criminal justice department, and their professors are literally LAPD who come in the next day and talk to them about what they've been going through as an LAPD officer. So it's a lot more hands-on. And as when I was in NAIA school, I felt the same way. So Eric, if you can explain the NAIA recruiting process. We've gone through the rules and regulations with the girls, but just from your perspective, when the recruiting process starts at the NAIA level and any information.
Yeah, no, great question. I think every program is different. I think obviously we do tend to start pretty early. I think that's just a part of where women's soccer is going in terms of the recruiting process. Obviously David might agree with this. I feel like it's slowing down a little bit. So now it's maybe you're taking a look at a player her junior year of high school now, instead of going all the way back to freshmen, sophomores. Obviously you're still tracking those kids. I think a lot of those, maybe it's starting just a bit later and not too much. Like I said, maybe you're not tracking somebody as a, necessarily just as a freshman, but like I said, junior year. We get a lot of transfers at Johnson Wales too. So obviously always keeping that in mind. So it's, those are typically late, like spring transfers and things like that are obviously competing with the high school athletes. But yeah, I would say typically for me, it's that junior year, because that gives me a lot of time to get to know them, their family, their background, and it gives us enough time to really catch enough tournaments and league play and things like that to get a good evaluation of them. So I would say junior year would be a big aspect for me.
Yeah, and I think the NCAA rule, has trickled over to NAIA.
Correct.
Which is, I think it's a good rule because, if you're asking a freshman to make a decision, which it's hard, if Florida State comes knocking to UNC, you don't want to turn that down. But I don't know how many 14, 15-year-olds know exactly what they want to do. I'm glad that is, because it has been very competitive, and I think second semester sophomore year, first semester junior year, that's about prime.
And I think the NCAA, I think women's soccer is like the highest transfer rate out of any sport in the NCAA, and that's probably just across the board. But I agree with David. Like, I think that rule has been really beneficial because it has allowed players to really develop a better idea and understanding of, hey, maybe I don't want to move away from home. Maybe I don't, maybe I want a smaller school. Maybe I want a bigger. So really developing those ideas and really their desires of what they want from that college as well. So it has trickled down over to the NAIA as well. So,
and I'm gonna jump over the development, because I think that was kind of back into the feedback of your own personal philosophy and coaching style. So this question goes to both of you: the amount of scholarships you have and the average cost of tuition fees the student athlete would incur going to both your schools. David, we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm working with about 6.5 scholarships. So our total cost for everything for 1 year is $30,000. So we try to tell people, and if you look at my roster, I hate to say this because I am trying to branch out a little bit more. Most of our roster right now is Georgia, because they have the Hope Scholarship, which for private institutions like Truett, it's really just a drop in the bucket now. If you go to public school, it's a lot better because it covers tuition. So I would say on average, a girl that has the high grades, gets a good scholarship from us, is going to pay probably between $5,000 and $10,000 a year. And, there's different other little scholarships that come in tow with that. I have found out with the Florida girls, that because we are that state touching state, we can accept the Florida prepay, which is nice. Because as I said, I do want to venture out, but I would say with the 6.5 scholarships, you're looking at between $5,000 and $10,000 per year.
Appreciate that.
And I think that's, so we operate just probably a little different. So I only have 2 scholarships athletically, but our academic money is very good. So I think when it all comes down to it, we operate with about 6 to 7 scholarships when you add the academic portion of it. Right. So it's really not that bad. So I think, obviously 2 is a scary number in terms of like, oh my gosh, it's so little, but it really does end up being a really good package when it comes down to the, academic portion of it. Our tuition's $34,000 a year. And then with dorms, it's roughly about $48,000. None of our players, really pay that full amount, obviously, but right. we're probably almost in the same situation as David. They'll probably end up between $6,000 to $13,000 in there, just depending. Then it goes back to like what David was saying is, our roster is a mix between internationals and Florida kids because we have bright futures. We have, when I was working at Thomas University in Georgia, it was Hope, the Hope Scholarship was big. Florida prepaid now, so I think finding those packages that can make it all work are really, really intriguing. But yeah, so, it ends up working out pretty well in terms of the financial part of it.
Yeah, I think I would, both of you would agree. When I was at the NAIA level, they somehow find a way to make the finances always work. They're really good at making packages so that they fit the family's needs, and I think they spend a lot of time with you and your family to
And
discuss.
you bring up a great point, because I think just kind of what David had mentioned up to too is like, now if I have a student athlete that's telling me like, hey, I'm looking at FIU or U in terms of state school, private school, that's where you're like, hey, just realize that the finances are going to, be quite different, in terms of what a state school is going to be able to do. Because like, David was saying with the Hope Scholarship and things like that, with Bright Futures and FLR prepaid, that does take you quite a bit farther at a state school. But like you said, as long as a student athlete's willing to look at the package overall and say, hey, you have this from FAFSA, you got this from academic money, you got this from athletic, and then we dwindle down, like you said, the packaging ends up being pretty competitive at the NAIA level.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I'm going to put these two questions here together, and I can't remember whose turn it is, but both of you can answer. How competitive is NAIA soccer, and do you play NCAA Division 1 through 3 schools in preseason and spring soccer, and how well do you do against them? So Eric, do you want to start?
No, I think like I said, like we were talking about before, I think the NAIA is extremely competitive. I think the level has grown quite a bit over the years too. I mean, I've been in the NAIA, I've coached in the NAIA for about 15 years now. So just watching the consistency, the level, I think back 15 years ago, you'd have those teams in your conference that you could pretty much always count as like a win. I think that gap is closing quite a bit. Now everybody's really competitive. I think I tell this to recruits. Well, I tell, for all those listening as well, I think we're the beneficiary of women's soccer growing quite a bit in this country. So I think a lot of schools are really putting a lot of resources, whether it's facilities, whether it's financially, whether it's just pushing women's soccer. So I think we benefit a lot from it. And obviously I've benefited my career from it. So I think they really want to be competitive, a lot of these NAIA schools as well. And we play Division II schools. We've never played a Division I school. We typically play quite a few Division II schools during the fall and the spring, just because of location-wise, they're here. Unfortunately, the NAIA, well, not unfortunately, it is what it is, but it doesn't help us rankings-wise when you play a Division II or Division I. So it's not like if I went to travel to Nova Southeastern, who was the Elite Eight in Division II national tournament this year, if I go beat them, I don't get anything rankings-wise from it. It doesn't help us MRPI-wise. It doesn't help us, that way. So, it doesn't encourage you to play a lot of them and out of conference. But typically we're competitive. I think, we've beat a couple Division II schools from down here, and like I said, we typically play them every year.
Yeah, I'll say this as well, because obviously it's going to be familiar for everybody here. Whenever we made the national tournament this year, we didn't play Kaiser, but we played at Kaiser, and Kaiser is a different level altogether. I mean, they're full of international players from Sweden and Germany, what have you. But we played Georgia State this spring, which is a Division I school. We lost 3-0 to them. But I would say Kaiser was better than Georgia State, which is a Division I school. Southeastern, they just graduated a girl that played for Nigeria in the World Cup. And Nigeria, she started against Germany in the quarterfinals of this past World Cup. So you're seeing a very high level of players and teams across the board now with NAIA, and it's exciting. And I would say even, one of the main differences from a playing standpoint, and this isn't in any way negative or a knock, but a lot of Division I schools, the emphasis is athleticism. It's about how fast you are, how strong you are. And whenever we played Georgia State this year, we moved the ball well on them, but whenever we crossed into the attacking third, we'd have that little through ball. And unfortunately, even though my girl may have had a 5-10 yard head start, their fullback just chased her down because she was so quick. So we had kind of circulated the ball, penetrated them well, but they just had the athleticism to run it down. And that's, what you're seeing is the main difference is you get to that level and you're just coming up against absolute athletes. But what you're seeing at the NAIA is you're seeing maybe better soccer players, if I'm being honest, but maybe not just quite as athletic.
Right. And I'll let both of you kind of touch on this. Maybe one of you take fall and one of you take spring. But what's a normal day in the life of an NAIA athlete, and maybe how does it differ from or not differ from an NCAA Division One?
I think I heard David talk about a little bit at the beginning. Was I think the balance. There's probably a good balance in the NAIA in terms of, like I said, we have a couple of Division One transfers on our team. We have a couple of Division Two transfers, and at those levels, sometimes they're doing the weight room session in the morning, like at 6 a.m. or 5:30 in the morning, and then going to classes and then going to practice at 3 p.m. and things like that. Whereas for us, we train at 8 in the morning. So we practice at 8 in the morning. We're done by 9:30. Our kids have 10:30 classes. So, going back to the academic part of it, we were able to create our players' schedules. So we have an academic team that they just asked me, hey, coach, what time you guys train in the fall? I tell them, hey, we're training every day at 8 a.m. to this time. So they make their academic schedule around what our practice schedule is. So typically we're done, for us, we're done by like 3 or 4 so that those players can work if they want to work. They can do their internships if they have an internship. They can do, any sort of group work and study, studying with teammates and things like that. So, but yeah, it's probably a lot more balanced than some of the other levels.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. David, touch on that and maybe talk about spring.
Yeah, with the spring, I mean, we tell our girls now you're never out of season, even though the fall is the official season. I actually, as a coach, I probably prefer the spring. And I know Eric touched on this earlier, where the fall, it's basically once you get done with preseason, you're preparing for one game or you're recovering from another. So development is tricky in the fall. So in the spring, I like it because we'll do about 4 or 5 weeks of pure strength and conditioning, but we'll spend 2 afternoons each week on position specific training. So I'll be talking to my assistant in games in the fall. I'll turn them like, we need to work with our outside mids and crossing, or I would love to have a couple of days just working on set pieces, but it's hard to find the time. So in the spring, we'll take the center mids out for 30 minutes, then the center backs, then the strikers, and just work on what's specific for that position. And the girls love it because it's smaller group. They get that bit more attention, and then they get to kind of hone some of their skills, maybe where they're a little bit weaker, and it's great. And then you get into 2 weeks of training, then a game. Then 2 weeks of training, then a game. So it's the girls might not quite enjoy it because they're not playing games as much.
Yeah.
We see so much development in the spring. So it's balanced, as Eric said, and it doesn't feel like a job. It is a big commitment. It's a lot of responsibility. We emphasize accountability within our team, holding each other accountable. And that's not only personal responsibility, but that's looking out for your teammates. So it is a big commitment, but it's very worthwhile.
Yeah. And I think going back to the fall as well, it is a grind. I mean, as easy as I made it maybe made it sound with the 8 a.m. and then you're gone to classes and then you're done by 3. If it was easy, everybody would do it. I think every college soccer player would say, yeah, sign me up. It's a grind. It's it's tough days, it's long days. In high school club, you're probably used to, obviously you play a tournament, you're playing like 3 or 4 games through a weekend. In college, you're playing 1 or 2 times in the week. And then, you might be playing limited minutes just depending on, where you kind of sit on the, in terms of positionally and playing time wise. So really that mental grind as well of like, hey, I've got to own my own development. I've got to hold myself accountable. And, if I'm in for 20 minutes on Saturday against, Kaiser, I'm going to do my job. I'm going to own my role and things like that. So it is quite a, tasking kind of fall. So we try to make it like David said earlier, you try to make it as enjoyable as possible in terms of, not making them dread it. But yeah, if it was easy, everybody would sign up to do it.
Absolutely. All right. And I'll give you guys, some time to I guess, give your sales pitch to these girls. There's some 2022s, a couple of 2023s in here. I think you guys know some of the girls' names on this list. So, David, why your program? Why Truett McConnell?
Yeah, I know I've touched on a few things already with this webinar already. I'd say if I could sum up our program in one word, it would probably have to be family. Our goal for our program is to be the best small school that you would want to go to in the South for soccer. It is a Christian university, and we don't shy away from that. And that, I think, helps bring about more of a family atmosphere. And so you're going to be playing, in an atmosphere where it's more of a we're here to help you rather than out to get you mentality. We love focusing on what you want to do with your life, and so we want you to enjoy your soccer. We want you to excel in it, and we're going to challenge you and push you to do that. And each year we try to get that a little bit better. We've been making the national tournament the last couple of years now, but without sacrificing what we stand for. And what we stand for is emphasis on the person, emphasis on meeting you where you are, getting the most potential out of you, and then hoping that you have the best possible college soccer experience that you could at a small school. So we're set in the mountains. So Eric has the beaches, we have the mountains. So I know Florida's obviously it's beaches central, but if you like the mountains, if you like outdoors, it's a great spot. And like I said, it's a great family atmosphere.
Appreciate that. And Coach Eric?
Yeah, I mean, David kind of said it. We're a mile and a half from the water. Our campus is literally right next to the beach, so it's a good area. But I think more than that, it goes back to what David said. It's like we really do run it as a family atmosphere, and that's a soccer program and a school. And that's why I've been there so long, and that's probably why David's been at Truett for so long. It's that I really appreciate that our faculty and staff and our coaches, whether it's basketball coaches, whether it's myself, we really want our players to come in and leave becoming the best version of themselves, and really growing as much as they want to grow. Now obviously that's on them, to own their development, but we really do try to provide them every avenue to become the best version of themselves, whether that's academically, athletically. I will always be there as a coach to help mentor, develop, and I'm one of the most competitive people that you'll probably ever meet in terms of I want to win. And it's what David said. Obviously, I'd love to be where David is in terms of getting national tournaments, but we're going to get there. We're going to win a conference championship. We're going to get past Kaiser. We're going to get past Southeastern. So if you want to play in a program that, wants to be one of the best programs in the country, and obviously in a great location. So I think those are the biggest things. So.
Absolutely. And also both of your programs, like I said at the beginning, couldn't ask for two better people to lead a program. So I'll just put that in there. Encourage the girls to start putting their questions that you guys have into the chat box, or start raising your hand to ask questions when we get to the question and answer slide. But Eric, if you could start, maybe just some final advice to players, maybe about training during the lockdown, recruiting process during the lockdown, or any final thoughts.
Yeah, I heard this the other day. It was like, I think really owning your development over this time frame. I think this has really allowed us the time to kind of reflect and really look back and say, hey, this is what I need to get better at. This is what I'm doing really well. But I heard it the other day in terms of just focus on getting 1% better, every single day. Don't worry about tomorrow, own today, and make sure you're developing yourself, training wise, whether it's technical work. I know a lot of clubs, and I know a lot of players are doing, the beast mode stuff, doing a lot of like technical sessions online. I think that's an aspect that's phenomenal. And I would always tell every player that's looking to play in college, start to really enjoy and be passionate about practice, because you practice a lot in college soccer and you don't play as many games as you do in high school and club. So really enjoying the aspect of developing and getting better and growing as a player. So I think this time, during this lockdown, really, I know it's tough because you're not around your teammates, but I've heard a lot of players say, oh, I just can't wait to see my teammates again. Like, I can't wait to be at practice again, and those are things that you really love to hear, because, I miss my club players. I miss my college players, and I think they miss their teammates too. So I think there's a lot of players and a lot of coaches out there that are really using this time to really reflect and be like, yeah, I can't wait to be around my family again, my teammates, and things like that. So, but yeah, just the technical portion of it. Obviously everybody's situation is different, whether they can get outside and do some fitness or do anything like that, because obviously that's something that's very important in the college game, is the fitness levels and the athleticism and things like that. So making sure you're still staying fit and not using this time as an excuse that you can't get better. You can still watch soccer. We've got stuff online. I would say watching soccer is one of the biggest things that you can learn from, watching your position, not just as a fan. So I think those are some things. And then obviously the recruiting process, you can, I was just on the phone with one of your players, Molly Schmidt, on Wednesday or Tuesday morning, and you could still reach out to coaches. You could still talk to them. Obviously the NCAA's got their dead period, so I don't know how long that's going on. But NAIA coaches, we can still talk. I Zoom chat with a couple of recruits from overseas and things like that. So using this time to really, maybe do virtual visits with, Truett, McConnell, Johnson & Wales, all these campuses that you might think about visiting in the future.
Yeah, that's great advice. David?
I think what Eric just said there, it's a perfect response, with everything that's going on at the moment. And it hasn't been ideal for anybody. And you're finding, as Eric said, it's you miss the relationships the most. I mean, you love soccer, and we all love soccer, and it's the common bond, but it's being around people that you miss the most. I would just say from a recruit standpoint, it has been a bit dead. I think everybody's trying to figure out how to go about best, but don't be afraid to contact the coaches. I know with NAIA, we have a fewer rules, but use this time to even research to find what best fits you. That's the thing that I tell recruits all the time. Always find what best fits you, because you unfortunately hear too many stories of girls that will go to a certain school, maybe because of reputation or it's a certain level or other people are going there and they become miserable. It's important for you that if you do end up playing soccer, you're going to enjoy it no matter what, especially if you're in a place that you really like. So that's just what I would say about that.
Yeah, completely agree. We always try to tell our kids to go somewhere that you could stay and go to school if something were to happen to your soccer career, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, Trent, that's a great point. It's like, be somewhere where if soccer wasn't in the equation, could you still be there?
Yeah.
Could you still attend that school if soccer was not a part of what what your daily routine was? So, and that's when you kind of know where you're at the right place.
Yeah, I mean, I coached in Kansas and recruited kids from California, of all places, in Arizona, and
wow.
to bring them to the middle of the United States. And did you live here if there was no soccer? And they'd look at me and be like, no. That's why I think NAIA schools, and coaches do a good job of helping the kids to understand, how to manage the schedule and the season and stuff like that. And that's why I think NAIA is such an important, pathway for kids to learn and understand. So we do have a couple questions here. What was your motivation, this to both of you, what was your motivation when you were playing soccer?
Wow. I see the questions on the group chat, and these are good questions, by the way. But I say for the first one, for me, I have an older brother. He's a year older than me, and so we had that sibling rivalry. We'd always play together. He was your typical outside mid, tricks and flicks, and I was your number 6. And I just got into the habit. I would follow him around whenever he had the ball, because he would dribble, lose the ball, then put his arms up to say, hey, where's my help? But he was never intending to pass. And I got into the habit of following him, and I enjoyed it. But, for me, it was that having that sibling that I could play with and enjoy it. But I do love to win. And I found most pleasure in being in the extra competitive games. Even if it wasn't going our way, I just love to compete. And so for me, to play soccer, it was such a passion for me that if there was a chance, it was just to kick about in the street. If it was 2v2, whatever it was, if there was a ball, I just loved it. And that's the thing I would tell you girls. Hopefully you always enjoy what you're playing. If you're not enjoying it, then you got to ask yourself, what do I need to change? But if you're enjoying what you're doing, then you're going to enjoy competing too.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's almost the same thing. It's like just that competition. And that's why we're in coaching now too, because obviously that it kept us in the game. It kept us, soccer's such a beautiful game and it's such a fun game. And so much passion in it. Obviously your teammates are a big part of it in terms of, I loved every, club team that I played for. I loved all the, college players I played with. So teammates are always a motivation in terms of being around good friends of yours. Obviously David will probably say it, Trent, you're the same. It's a lot of my best friends and a lot of my closest friends were my college teammates, my club teammates. So I think that was, it was always motivation to go out and win with them. So it was always that competition. But yeah, it was, it's a great game. It's a lot of fun.
Here's a great question. What is the biggest quality you look for in a leader?
Wow.
I think for me, and I know now in these days it's tough. It's maybe the staying away from being judgmental in terms of don't like judging. I think judgment is such a big thing nowadays. I think those that can lead without necessarily judging their teammates on a daily basis, on a one-time thing. I think those that can really empathize, saying, hey, so-and-so might just be going through something today, and really reaching out and finding out what that something is. Because, like I have a lot of players, sometimes it'll be like, oh, so-and-so is in a grumpy mood or whatever, but like find out why, find out why, ask them, is everything okay with the family? Is everything, academically? So really that empathy and that ability not to judge people. And I think the communication, I think we talked about it in the earlier slides, communication is so important nowadays. You got to be clear. You've got to be detailed. You've got to, you can't just assume, you've got to make sure you're communicating. So the communication, and like I said, the empathy part of it, of understanding that everybody's background is different. Everybody's upbringing was different. Everybody's situation is different. Respect them and respect their them as people, and don't, just stay away from judging.
Yeah, empathy is such a great quality. David?
Oh, I love empathy. I would say, along those lines, for me, I'm massive about servant leadership, and for me it's a biblical concept, and that's why it resonates with me so much. But I think if you can find those people that are willing to put the interests of their others before themselves, that's huge. It's countercultural. Because all our culture wants to tell us today is me, myself, and I. Look out for yourself, treat yourself, whatever it is. Whereas find those people that say, I'm going to look for the interests of my teammate. I'm going to serve them. Because, what we do, we encourage our seniors to, whenever, and our captains, you be the ones to move the goals. You be the ones to, clean the bibs or whatever it is. We're not a program that says, oh, you're a freshman, well, we need you to do this. We need you to pick up the trash. I just don't think that's conducive for a good team spirit. So we look for that servant leadership quality, and we find that if you find a group of girls that are willing to serve and look out for the interests of each other before themselves, it creates the best team dynamic too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And to be honest with you, the girl that asked that has played for me for the past 2 years, and when doing a survey from her teammates about her servant leadership and empathy are the two things that actually probably describe her the most. So that's awesome. A question from Maria: as we are living through this pandemic, should we still be reaching out to schools? I think you guys touched on that a little bit, but how often? Not to be annoying to coaches, but how often?
No, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I'm trying to keep touch base with the recruits probably weekly, if not bi-weekly, in terms of every 2 weeks or something like that, just to kind of make sure their family, especially like now, it's like making sure, hey, how's your family? How are you doing? How's, health wise, safety wise? But yeah, probably multiple times in the week might be a lot, but yeah, probably like every other week and things like that. I think that's been nice to really get to know, because again, during this time, you could really still get to know a lot of the coaches and a lot of the players, whether it's something like this. And I think this is what you guys do is fantastic from this aspect of it. It's that ability to do Zoom call and Zoom meeting and just see them face to face. I think that's been a really cool aspect of the recruiting process right now. Like I'll get an email and I'll be like, hey, you want to just jump on a Zoom meeting? And then you're looking at each other and it's fantastic. And you really get to know each other a little better. So But yeah, I think reaching out now would be a great aspect.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the only thing I'd say to that, Trent, is there's nothing wrong with persistence in this, girls. I know you don't want to be, I don't want to be that annoying player that's always getting hold of the coach. I'll just be honest with you. Sometimes I'll get an email, and it's one of those, if it's a busy moment, I'll put it on the back burner, and sometimes I'll forget about it, and it is sometimes to my regret. So don't be afraid. If you haven't heard back from a coach, recognize that sometimes they are busy, and they haven't pushed you to the side. They've just maybe forgotten about you. So don't. If I can encourage you to be more persistent than none, I think that carries most weight.
I think that's
a fantastic. I mean, that's really that's a really great point. I think like you said, we just kind of get caught up with some stuff sometimes, and you lose track of an email and things like that. And there is nothing wrong with persistence. It's not like we're sitting there like getting super annoyed that somebody wants to come play for us. Like that's we're not sitting there like, oh my gosh, this is like the 10th email I've gotten. Why doesn't she get it? Be persistent, and especially with recruiting nowadays. I think recruiting has changed since 15 years ago when I got into it, and then David will probably attest to this, and Trent, you know it because you work a lot with college coaches. I think a lot of players think that we're just going to go out and find, go out and seek you. A lot of the recruits that we have nowadays are people that have researched us and reached out to us. I think a lot of people think that at tournaments, it's like, oh, I won't email anybody because they'll come to my field and see me. Email us, let us know that you're interested. Hey, I want to study, because one of my biggest pet peeves in recruiting is we don't carry maybe as many majors as Truett McConnell in terms of I don't have nursing here. I don't have education here. We have business. We have hospitality. So one of my pet peeves is when I get an email before a tournament, it's like, oh, coach, I'm really interested in Johnson & Wales and I want to study nursing. And I'm like, we don't have that, so really doing the research now too in this time that you can reach out to the schools that do have your major and do, academically support what you're looking to do. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with persistence. That's such a great point, David.
And a question for me, just to kind of tag on to that, but you talked about emailing before showcases and tournaments. And I tried to express to our kids that coaches plan out their weekend. They're not going to get an email Thursday or Friday night and say, oh, I'll go watch you at this. When do you start to plan out that weekend, just so they know like what's a good time frame? I know the follow-up email on a Wednesday or Thursday is good, but when should the initial email come?
I'd say for me, a week in advance of the showcase is usually good, and it is quite a time-consuming thing, just to, especially if it's a castle event or Disney. There's so many fields, so many time slots. And, one of the things that Eric talked earlier about is, one of the main differences with NAIA, a lot of times we don't have the resources, but that also includes staff. Mm-hmm. So if I have my assistant and we're going to a complex that has 20 fields, there's only so much the two can get done. And we're also of the mindset where we want to watch you for more than a half. A lot of times, unfortunately, a coach is going to see you do one thing wrong and say, I don't like her, move aside. But we want to say, let's give these girls a number of chances. Let's see what their off-ball movement looks like, their work rate. And so we try to stay at a field as long as we can. So a week in advance allows us to kind of prepare for that and say, oh, she's playing Friday at noon, Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning. Hopefully I'll get out to both games as well.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think about a week out is what I look for, because like David said, we're pretty much, if you email me, we're going to see you at some point in that weekend. As long as I feel like you're legitimately interested in Johnson & Wales. And like I said, with email, like, oh, I want to study nursing and I don't have nursing. Those are the ones I won't be able to go see. But if we feel like sincerely you're looking at Johnson & Wales, we will make sure we find the time to go to your game. So, and then typically the night before the tournament, we'll kind of look at the schedule and recalculate where we're going, when we're going, the days, and things like that. So, David brings up a great point. The staffing is, obviously assistant coaches, full-time assistants and things like that. Really making sure that we have that ability that week to plan is a great time for us. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Another question from Riley. What should we say in our emails to coaches that would help us stand out? So maybe one or two pieces of advice.
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, I know it's sometimes tough because I know some students don't know what they want to study, and I get that. But obviously what you want to major in, and maybe like, obviously what those career goals are in terms of that major. Obviously what club you're at, what number, obviously the schedule that you have, whether it's upcoming tournaments or upcoming league games and things like that. Obviously the position's important. I think if you're emailing somebody that might not be at a tournament, or like if you're in Florida and you're looking at a California school, video is always a benefit in terms of, do you have a half? Do you have a clip? Do you have something to send to them? Because again, we go back to the resources. Some schools, I won't be able to fly out to California just to watch a player play. I'll have to depend on their coaches telling me who they are as a player on video and things like that. So really being as detailed as humanly possible.
Excellent.
The only thing I'll add is, and I think it's the unspoken word that everybody knows, is copy and paste happens both sides. Just so you know, girls, it's not just coaches that copy and paste to recruits. We know, but sometimes I'll get an email, "Hey, Coach Sanders, I really want to come to Washington State," and I'm like, "Sorry, that's not me." So we know it happens both sides, and then to be completely vulnerable with you, sometimes we do it when there's mass recruits. But what we find is, and this goes both ways, the more specific that you can be about your interest, like you've researched it, you've noticed that the size suits you, the location suits you, what the school stands for suits you, that speaks volumes. Because and I think you girls can testify too, you've probably got a couple of emails already where you're like, has this coach really seen me, or is it just a mass email? So be sincere, but also be specific about what you're looking for and why you want to have us look at you.
Yeah, and I think that also goes back to maybe personalize the email as well. I think back, like I said, 15 years ago, even sooner, I think that email that just starts out with coach or a good afternoon coach, you pretty much know that you're blind copied on a on an email that went out to a lot of coaches. So anytime you can do Coach Dobrzanski, and then like David said was, maybe I've had recruits say, "Hey, congratulations on going 12-5-1. Congratulations on finishing third in the conference," and things like that. So really, as many of those specifics that you can add, it makes me feel like you did the research and you did the work to find out more about what we've got going on. How many kids graduated, things like that. What's our schedule like, and that nature.
Yeah, that's great. And here's a question for you guys, and you may not have an answer, or you probably know a little bit more than I do because of your meetings and whatnot. But do you think any on-campus visits and or camps will continue this summer, or do you think they will all be canceled due to COVID-19?
Well, I know, just speaking specifically for Truett, we are reopening on the 18th of May. I don't know where Florida is. I know Georgia, our governor, he kind of is getting things rolling here and opening up stuff already. So we're allowed to have campus visits beginning May 18th. So hopefully that'll be the norm, especially across the Southeast. I think there's a lot of similarities there. So yeah, for visits, for summer camps, hopefully they'll be made available for you.
Fantastic.
I think in the state of Florida, I've heard of a lot of programs that are scrapping the summer camps, just because of uncertainty and obviously not knowing if the facilities and stuff like that are going to be open. So I know Florida, it sounds like it's in a different situation than Georgia, but I do know a lot of friends that are in Division I, Division II, that they're no longer going to do their ID camps. They're no longer going to do their team camps and things like that. For the most part, I believe from the people I've talked to, the coaches I've talked to in the state of Florida, we can still do campus visits. So like, even though Johnson & Wales is closed academically and closed, that employees aren't necessarily on campus right now, we can still do campus visits. And I know a lot of schools are still that way for the most part. Like I said, NCAA is different because they're still in that dead period of not being able to contact. And I don't know what that entails from their aspect of it, of that dead period. But yeah, for the most part, I've heard that the Florida schools can still have people on campus and visit. We just can't train, do camps and things like that. So unfortunately, for those that do kind of look for those camps to go to, go visit and things like that. Those might not happen.
Great. Last call for questions, but and like I tell the girls every week, if you guys have any questions you think of over the next couple of days, feel free to send an email to me, and I will personally reach out to Coach David and Coach Eric and get the answers for you guys. But on behalf of Florida Rush Soccer, Florida Rush staff, I'd like to thank both of you for spending your time tonight speaking to our girls, and for all the interest you guys and time you guys always give us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully next year we'll be able to have an in-person college ID camp again. But, these Zoom meetings have been good, and we really appreciate you guys' time.
And if you don't mind me saying, I think what you're doing here, Trent, is awesome. I mean, this isn't the norm for clubs. And so for you girls, you got a coach that's looking out for you, and once you girls didn't know what's college recruiting's about, this is an awesome thing. And it's not just because you got Eric and myself on, but just that you get to see all the different levels of college coaches. So this is really cool. Thanks for letting us be on here, Trent.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, no, Trent, I mean, I think it's a fantastic idea. When you emailed me, I was like, absolutely, this is brilliant. And I think so obviously I appreciate it from our side. Obviously I've known Dave, David, I played him a couple years ago down at Kaiser and things like that. But I think my maybe last piece of advice would be to players, really own your own experience through the recruiting process, because I think what players tend to think through recruiting is there's one cookie cutter way of going through recruiting, and it's not that way. So I think a lot of players are like, oh, my senior year, if I'm not getting recruited or anything like that, then I'm behind, or I'm doing, something's wrong. Everybody's routine is everybody's way of getting recruited is just different, so don't push the panic button. If you want to play college soccer, there's going to be a program there for you to play college soccer. But yeah, really own your own recruiting experience, because like I said, I hear these stories of people panicking. Oh my gosh, I'm, now I've got to make a quick decision because I feel like I'm only getting recruited by one place and I don't want them to disappear. Really enjoy the experience, and everybody's way of doing it is different.
Absolutely. Once again, I appreciate your guys' time, and wish you the best of luck. And we will definitely keep in touch, and hopefully send some Florida Rush players your guys' way in the very, very nearest time frame. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.